Okay, one of the biggest stories right now is that Ukraine is officially ready, according to the EU, to join the EU. But what does that mean? It doesn't mean it's going to happen anytime soon. There's a very lengthy process. So here we're going to look at this CNN article about this. The European Commission said in a report that so-called accession talks should finally start, nearly 18 months since the bloc accepted Ukraine as a candidate. So it went through candidate status 18 months ago, and now it is getting official status to begin working toward accession. The European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen said today is a historic day because today the Commission recommends that the Council opens accession negotiations with Ukraine and Moldova. Okay, so that's good. They're making progress. They're moving the right direction. Ukraine has held ambitions to join the EU for more than a decade. In late 2013, then President Viktor Yanukovych's decision to scrap the trade deal with the European Union and instead turn toward Russia sparked street protests and his eventual ouster following in March 2014. And so that's the Maidan Revolution. Now, I clicked on this link, and here's what we saw. This was a fascinating article that, I wasn't really paying attention at the right time. This is, at the time, November 25th, 2013, when this first started. Ukrainians, angry at their government's last-minute decision to suspend talks with the EU, clashed for a second day with police in the capital, Kyiv, on Monday. Now again, this is the second day of what would ultimately become the Maidan Revolution. On both occasions, police responded with batons and tear gas to disperse them. So they were heavy-handed. And, when you hear Putin talk about this, he always talks about the coup. Well, he never talks about fomenting stuff in Donbass or fomenting or taking over in Crimea. He talks about this coup. Well, this coup, there's more to the backstory of it, and we don't really hear much about it. Ukraine's about turn after a year of insisting that it was intent on signing a historic political and trade agreement with the European Union. Now, that wasn't going to be full entrance, but they were going to integrate more into the European Union. Okay, Ukraine's President Viktor Yanukovych is in a tight spot under severe economic pressure from Ukraine's giant neighbor Russia not to join the EU. So Russia was trying to twist their arm at that point as well. He also was facing a key EU demand that he was unwilling to meet, to free the former Prime Minister, Tymoshenko, his bitter political opponent. Okay, so that's partly corrupt, or at least it looked really corrupt because it was a political opponent who was found guilty of abuse of office in a Russian gas deal and sentenced to 7 years in prison in a case widely seen as politically motivated. Her supporters say she needed to travel abroad for medical treatment. Yanukovych has decided it's more important to keep Tymoshenko in prison than to integrate Ukraine closer toward Europe. So one of the demands to integrate into Europe, into this sphere, was to free this political opponent. And at the same time, Russia was offering the sweetheart deal of take this instead of that EU deal and integrate more into our orbit. So that's kind of what was going on. He's left the country vulnerable to Vladimir Putin's threats and pressure. That will be Yanukovych's legacy if he doesn't reverse course. And as we know, he couldn't reverse course. He would eventually flee the country in March. So this started in November of 2013 and it ended in March of 2014. Okay, let's go back to the other story. So Ukraine has held ambitions to join the EU for more than a decade. Today, the history of Ukraine and the whole of Europe has taken the right step. The European Commission has recommended starting membership negotiations in Ukraine, but this is just a start. It's going to be a long, lengthy process. It's going to take potentially years. Talks will not begin until a set of conditions have been met. So the pre-talks conditions have been met, and the legislature in Ukraine, the Verkhovna Rada, have been working very quickly to get anti-corruption measures and all kinds of other laws in place so that they can meet European standards. The European Commission said in a statement, the Ukrainian government and the parliament demonstrated resolve in making substantial progress on meeting the 7 steps required for negotiations to open. The political decision to open negotiations, the actual negotiations, will only begin once the conditions are fully met, which at this point could still be years. So it's going to take a while, but they're working on that path. So this is a great day for Ukraine, but it's not over. But they're moving the right direction. I also don't know if they're going to be able to actually conclude this while the Russians occupy the territory. I'm not sure if it will work like it works with NATO, with the Russians in the territory. They couldn't join NATO, and or they'd have to just cut off that piece of Ukraine, which they're unwilling to do. Okay, but nonetheless, they're making progress. They're moving the right direction toward integration with the EU. I personally think that integration with the EU is as much, maybe even more of a threat to Russia than even NATO. And the reason for that is that they're integrating into this wider system. Yeah, I think that's probably what's going on here. It's a very bad day for Putin, and it's a pretty good day for Ukraine. Okay, that's all that I have. Thanks for your time and your attention, and the likes and the shares and the subscribes. But thank you more than anything else for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.